birthday!
Yay! Welcome back, everybody, to Chaps Many Cultures. It is Friday. This week went by fast. And before we do anything else, I want to take a quick second and do a shout out, whether she's watching or not. But it is a special person's birthday today, and I think she's celebrating with some adult beverages and some fresh seafood somewhere on the Irish coast. Happy birthday, Tamara Thorpe.
Yes, happy birthday! It's your birthday!
Yeah. All right.
We should actually have a segment. We should give birthday shout outs. People send their birthday stuff in. There used to be a show on TV. They probably did it here in America too, where they used to this kid show, television show, used to recite names. Happy birthday, David. Happy birthday, Christian. And of course, you hung on the as a kid. You hung looking at it, going, "Please say my name."
And I've been to events where we've done that as part of the team. Rooms that were there for seminars for a whole weekend, or maybe for 5 days in a row, and rooms with, let's say, 150, 200 people, sometimes even up to 400. And every day when we started the day, we made sure that we identified the people whose birthday it was, and they went up on stage and they got a standing ovation from the whole room.
Nice.
And what this does, it may sound a little childish or whatever. What it does, though, is magical, because if you celebrate people, you put them right in the spotlight. You give them confidence. You give them you give them energy. It is something I think is we're not celebrating ourselves enough, and I'm guilty as charged. I don't celebrate the people in my family enough. I don't celebrate myself enough. I'll be the first to admit that is one of my weaknesses. And if we celebrate each other, then we're not mad at each other.
Absolutely. Well, but I think you said something about, it seems silly and that kind of stuff. Silly comes through play, right? And play is what we're talking about today, okay? So we're talking about sports. We're talking about the insights. What insights can we grab out of sport about a culture? But of course, when you're preparing, you said in those situations, you're preparing the room, you're preparing the atmosphere or setting up the energy in the room. So I'm going to play something related to sport, not of my culture, kind of my culture in terms of close neighbours, but of my culture as far as sport is concerned. But I just want everybody to sit back and enjoy the preparation, the connectedness that comes through this relatively short video, but it's got to be played in its entirety to get the effect. So please.
Is this the part where I need to get a beer, or is
yeah, you can go and get a beer if you like. Actually, you should. It's part of the sport too, I think.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
And now the All Blacks just waiting for the French to peel off the tracksuits, stand in front of them and receive the challenge of the haka. challenge.
Haka.
Haka.
How often have the All Blacks been defeated?
Well, I mean, many times, but not as many as they've won, I don't think.
I think it must be awe-inspiring to watch. Look at the opponent's team, how they were like either in shock or in disbelief or whatever went through their minds. How do you go into a game not be at least a little bit tense, knowing that this is how hyped up your opponent is? This is how intense this is going to be.
Well, it's
impressive.
It is something that we have the greatest amount of respect for in Australia. It was one of the biggest rivals in rugby, Australia and New Zealand, across a small expanse of water. But the haka is a representation of unity and of strength and of real tribal community, right? And yes, I guess it's a kind of a warrior type of presentation, that it is meant to be intimidating. Mm-hmm. But I think the haka is also used in many situations, in many times where it's given respect. There's been funerals, weddings. It's done at places where there is somebody of honor, like you said. You're putting someone up on stage. You're celebrating their strength. You're celebrating their individuality, or they're part of a community. Mm-hmm. And so it is meant to be intimidating. But I think if you really, and I really encourage anybody to have a look on YouTube. Many of the videos on YouTube, they're not all about that setting it up in terms of sport. There's, as I said, weddings and funerals. This is a real true sign of respect. And the reason I played that, if I ever feel kind of like a little bit down, I'll sit and watch a haka and I go, how can you not watch that and be inspired by the strength, right?
Even an Australian would watch it and be inspired. So that is not ruffle your like, oh, these are our rivals and I cannot be inspired by this.
No, absolutely. And I encourage, actually, that many of the island nations around there have their own version of the haka as well. So when the Fijians play the New Zealanders or the Tongans play, it is a real, that both teams do it together, and they show the utmost respect of each other. So and kind of, I was thinking that when we were thinking about the topic today, is that this is an aspect of culture that's brought into the sport, but it also happens the other way around. And sport and the type of sport that's played in a country, you look at one of the African nations that celebrate their great achievements over the years in athletics. Is it part of the sport? And we're not going to get into the specifics too much, but what can we read into it? About the what comes out of that culture, the mindset, the community, how it reflects itself. So that's kind of it's a big topic, and we probably won't get to everything today, but we'll touch on a couple of things that are in relation to that.
Yeah, when you brought up that idea this morning, let's talk about this, my mind immediately went to how much time do we have for this? Because I could go on forever about this topic. I think sports are great vehicles for metaphors. They are a snapshot of society oftentimes, and they help us tell a story within the confines of that sport, and the rules and the setup of one sport, how it's played is often a condensed narrative of something else that is going on. I think the old Romans did that, right? The old Greeks did that. I'm sure other non-European ancient cultures had a similar approach to this. I happen to be from a European background, so that when I think of sports in ancient times, I think of the Olympic Games and its originality in ancient Greece. And we look at, the Romans used sports to entertain the public in a way, panem et circenses, bread and games, right? So it was part of a societal fabric, because it's an entertainment for the spectators. It's a diversion from the harsh realities of life sometimes, and it's also a reflection of life to a certain degree. And look at sports that came from other continents. And the horsemanship of Mongolia, and how it influenced how equestrian sports are done today, right? You look at, well, what else comes to mind? I think there's Native American sports like lacrosse, or what was the sport that the Incas and the inhabitants of the Andes played?
Yeah.
It was like a precursor of some kind of ball game as well. So
Yeah.
all the ancient societies had some sort of sport as a proxy, so to say, for other conflicts that needed to be resolved. Right? Sports can be a projection of so many things in life. And since we said sports and business and culture, I find myself in our work to often use sports as a vehicle to explain how different cultures organize work and how they go about solving problems. I had this morning. I had a training call with an American couple, a U.S. couple that are just moved to Germany, and I already primed them that we're going to talk about football and football. There's the real football, the one where you have a ball, a sphere-shaped object that you move around the field with your feet, hence football. And then you have the other football. That's what US people call football. It's actually hand egg, but it's you know what I mean. It's this kind of stuff, right? There's a ball and feet, and then there's the egg-shaped object that you carry in your hand. No, don't ask me why it's called football. So I'm sure I'm rubbing some people the wrong way, and I'm bringing this up because, hey, this is the weekend. Okay, I'm so happy you brought this topic to my attention, or to this program, Brett, because this is the weekend that for my team matters most all year. You see my team represented here in this image. It's the person with the red clothing that is representative of the soccer team from Munich, and they will be competing against the soccer team from Paris on Sunday for the title of Champions League champion. So that will be the European Continental Club Championship. That's probably aside from any national titles, that's the biggest thing you can win, right? So this guy in that image is probably 10 years old. That guy still plays for that team, and that's Thomas Müller. So we expect my side of the family, or my side of my friend circle, we expect Paris to get Müllered. That's the term we're using. So Müller. So So in cultural training work, when I work with North Americans and Europeans, I often use these sports, the American football and soccer, as comparative tools or systems, as in which I highlight, hey, this is how work can be organized this one way, or it can be organized another way. And that's most people that I work with have an understanding of one of these two sports. And then when we go into the metaphorical explanation, or the is it an allegory, metaphor, the story, right? It clicks with people. Say, oh, that's why my foreign counterparts always do this. Okay, yeah, that would explain that. Yeah, now it makes sense, right? So sports can be great vehicles to explain more complex ideas in a simplified, reduced version, I think.
Absolutely. And I often use that metaphor of the American football versus our type of football thinking in terms of the celebration of the individual, which happens more so here in the US with a quarterback, which is always the jock. That's where all the energy is up to protect that person and elevate that person to the status that they are. They're normally the highest paid person on the team. Then they're normally the ones where the wins and the losses are scored against, right? Where you say the quarterback is playing against this other quarterback, and therefore if the quarterback has the next amount of wins or losses, then it's but that doesn't happen in more of an egalitarian type of setting that the traditional soccer type football is. I use cricket as an example as well. I use cricket even for internal reflection or internal insights into a country like India, where I can explain the difference in leadership style from an MS Dhoni, which used to be the captain of India, till the present day, where Kohli is a more of a confident, more aggressive. We would call aggressive captain. It's reflected in the way that now the team plays, and and when I talk to people who know the game, they go, "Well, that's obviously Kohli is from New Delhi, right? Kohli is from Delhi. MS Dhoni was from southern India, so their styles are different in terms of the internal culture, right? So it's and so I think there's so much richness, there's so much to be mined in terms of looking at the sport and the way it can have us give us an insight into the culture.
And I think that sports, at least in the last 100 or more years, has become this televised or media marketed event. It's less than a something that you do because you want to be active in it. You want to play and maybe stay in shape or be physically in a competitive format. It has become something that is marketable and is televised or on radio, or it's reported on, and it has taken on a much bigger event character than it was originally. And so the heroes that are formed or that are shaped by this process, they often become the poster children for certain tribal or national identities, right? So you look at club sports, so you have the tribal belonging to a group of fans that is behind or is supporting one club, whether that's a college team here in the United States or if it's a professional team. So there is a rallying cry around that club or team identity. And then you have the national competitions. That's when we project our national feelings or attitudes on a national team and have them compete in a fairly peaceful manner. And as a German, I have to say this for Germany, that was part of our saving grace, because Germany after World War II was a pariah in the eyes of the world for various good reasons, and the vehicle for Germany to come back on a global scene was football, or soccer as they say here in North America, because Germany entered the international consciousness again in a positive way as a soccer team that won so in a humble way, and won without being stereotypically nasty German, what people had in mind when they thought of Germany after World War II. So football has been I think the cultural phenomenon that is responsible for how Germany sees itself today. I may be over playing my card here a little bit, and most Germans may not see it the same way because they still live there. I don't live in Germany, and I look at it from the outside, and I find it fascinating how the tool of an athletic competition has become like a calling card for a nation. If you could look back at 2006 when Germany had the privilege of hosting the Soccer World Cup, the country was able to present itself as this new country, as a fairly recently reunified country after the division during the Cold War, and as a country that has come to terms with its history, and it presented itself in a way that most foreigners, most non-Germans were not aware of. They saw, oh, this is Germany today. This does not match up with the stereotype that I had in my mind. This was the best marketing campaign that Germany could have done. Right. So it really, and it reflected on the self-image Germans have of themselves. Now, like, yeah, we're hosts to the world, and we're welcoming, kind, and we play soccer well too, and then come in here. So and look at our team. It's not just white people. It's, hey, there's people with Arab sounding names, and there are people with darker skin. Yeah, those are Germans too. Go figure. Yeah. So that's how sport actually becomes part of a cultural narrative, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think internally, well, I mean, it can be weaponized a little bit.
Of course,
certainly, you know, we have had discussions in this country of the US about the influence of politics and how sport has either been used or people that in that sport have been used to project a certain politics, but it can be used on the other side. An example a number of years ago in Australia, my country, where a cricketer actually died playing cricket. I mean, he got killed playing the sport that we love and cherish, and where it's a very globally competitive. I mean, our competitors, like the big competitors in the world, South Africa, the UK, England, these around the world that play cricket and play at such high level. I was very much impacted here in the US, and I play cricket here in the US. Most of the teams here are from the South Asian countries, people that play. And when he died, there was this outpouring, wonderful outreach and outpouring to our cricketing community, the Australian cricketing community here in the US. So it connected us, and of course then those rivalries and that all went away. At that point, it was beyond politics. It was beyond the rivalry of the sport. It was, we play the same thing. We have fun at the same thing. We connect around the same thing. We understand if it was one of our countrymen that would have done the same thing, you would have done the same. And also to the fact that the Australian cricket captain, strangely enough, almost is held in the same regard as the Prime Minister in the country. It is, when that happened, the captain of the team had a press conference. There was a visceral collective feeling that the rest of the country, this was at that moment the leader of the country, not the Prime Minister, the captain of the sporting team, that reflected our grief and our the impact that this sport has on us, and really kind of ties us together. So it was very impactful. And so I think that when you're not a part of a culture, and you look at a continent like Africa or Asia, or Asian cultures have a lot of martial arts. It's reflective of a lot of the deep honor and respect that they pay to each other. And I've never done martial arts, but every time I hear somebody describe it, there's this real sense of inner thoughtfulness, inner discovery that takes place before you can even present yourself in front of an opponent.
And this was a misconception for me for the longest part, because I had never been a fan of martial arts. I only saw the fighting part. I thought, oh, why would I do that? And then my daughters developed an interest in Taekwondo, and we said, okay, if that's what they want to do, let them do it. And that's when I recognized this is not about the fighting. This is about becoming one, your mind and your body becoming one, and becoming aware of how your mind and your body are a close, or a system together, right? And how martial arts is actually not about fighting. It's about becoming whole with yourself first, so you don't have to fight. And the beauty in that is I think that is very reflective of many Asian cultures, that of being more mindful, more conscious of oneself, and being maybe resolving conflicts in a different manner than maybe European or American or African cultures do, right? So I think the sports that become popular in certain corners of the world I think they're born out of the culture in which they evolved, right? It's one begot the other.
Yeah.
And when you talk about weaponizing it, and then I would give you that. I'll give you an example. There's the weaponizing, and then there's the harmonizing, and both go often hand in hand, which I found very interesting. I remember in the 2014 Soccer World Cup, which was held in Brazil, we now know that Germany won that tournament. By the way, the first time that a team from outside of South America won a World Cup that was hosted in the South American country. That usually didn't happen. So the semifinals was Brazil against Germany, one of the big rivalries of two great soccer nations, and Brazil was the host, and Germany took Brazil apart in their home stadium. It was a humiliation, basically, and it was unbelievable for Germans. Most Germans who watch it will never forget the day that happened, because we know it's very unlikely that it will happen again. and most Brazilians want to forget it and they can't. So I remember we were living in Tennessee, and I took my girls to the soccer summer camp in a small town in Tennessee, and I let them off at the parking lot, and I see this van with the sliding doors parked 2 cars over, and I overhear Portuguese. I hear this family getting out of the car speaking Portuguese, and everything. And this was a day or two after Germany had defeated Brazil. And I was like, oh my God, let this be people from Portugal. Please let this be Portuguese people. And I understand that it is Portuguese. I wasn't able to detect whether it's Brazilians or Portuguese who are speaking it. So I bring the girls back from the soccer field. We speak German on the way back to the car. And sure enough, there's the Portuguese speaking people, and they hear us and they say, oh, what language do you speak? Is that German? I said, yes. And I hear you speaking Portuguese. So where are you guys from? Oh, we're from Brazil. And I was like, oh gosh, this is not good. This is not good. So we had a conversation in that parking lot that lasted probably for 30 minutes. And at the end, I think we came out well. I thought this was going to be very confrontational. And what happened was that the Brazilians said, we are so mad with our team that they lost to your team. This is such an insult to ourselves. And how could we let that happen? We're not blaming you for defeating us. We're blaming our own team for being such incompetent players. And then at that point, it was clear that Germany would face Argentina in the finals. Now you have to understand that in soccer, Argentina and Brazil, not just in soccer, in anything, Argentina and Brazil, that's like oil and water. So they sent me off by saying, hey, and just know that on Sunday, all of Brazil will be behind you. You gotta you gotta whoop Argentina's butt. And I'm like, okay. So that was the first. I thought that was the weaponization.
Yeah.
And then it created an immediate rapport and harmony in the face of another opponent. And on that soccer field, at a different point in time, I was speaking German across the field to my kids. And right next to me, like 10 feet away, was this other dad who I overheard speaking Portuguese with his kids. So it turns out he's Brazilian. And there's immediately, when Germans and Brazilians meet, there's 2 things that they're rivals in. First is soccer, and the other thing is Formula One racing.
Oh, yeah.
There's a long tradition of Brazilian race car drivers and German race car drivers. So I paid my respects. I did what I naturally do is I said, you know what? We as Germans, we honor the fact that Brazil has been world champion more often than any other country. So I respect that. And we admire your soccer. It's not that we think we're better. We strive to be as good as you are. And I said, what I truly believe is that Ayrton Senna, the late Brazilian world champion, was the greatest driver in history, even though a German driver by the name of Schumacher won 7 world titles, but Senna only won 3 of them. I still consider him the better driver overall. So when I expressed that there was a commonality in light of the difference, that's how we became friends. Oh, okay, you're okay. Not because I bowed to his national identity. It was that we had a mutual understanding of the sport that we both like. And so we made it clear that we both have an understanding, that we understand the intricacies and the differences and the nuances. And at that point, the commonality matters more than the rivalry. And that's, I think, how sport can be a harmonizer rather than a weaponizer.
Yeah, I just watched the documentary on Ayrton Senna because I always held him in the highest regard. And if you see the people that are being interviewed in that and the effect that he had on the pride of the country. Hey, Kelly. We gave a shout out, Kelly, by the way, early in the episode to Tamara, but we're pretty sure that she's probably not listening to us after a few adult beverages. So I think it was just another great way of learning a little bit more about the Brazilian mindset and seeing the effect that the sport and the reflection that sport has about the culture. And then of course I had the good fortune not long after that to work with a couple that are moving to Brazil, right? And I recommend these things. I recommend the these type of documentaries, sporting documentaries,
Right.
to for particular countries that people are going to in that case. Yeah.
If you're a subscriber to Amazon Prime, or if you're not, I think you still can access it. There's a documentary around soccer on Amazon that highlights how soccer is played throughout the continents. And sure, I'm a bit focused on soccer. I'm not discrediting any other sport, but soccer is just in the numbers game. It's probably the most popular sport around the world. And I learned in my work, and as a non-working tourist myself, that no matter where I go in the world, if I am able to connect to the local sports tradition and show an interest in what's going on locally, that seems to be the quickest rapport builder. So typically I would ask, no matter where people are from, I would ask them, what is your club? What is your team? I had this today with this American couple. And the gentleman grew up in rural Indiana. So I said, who's yours? And he said, of course. Right. And sure enough, we have this connection, and I can ask, even if I don't know enough about college basketball in Indiana, I could still, that's my entry point, right? That's where I can put the lever and say, okay, how far can I get in here? And that's how sports, to me, in my personal life and in my business practice, has become a really powerful vehicle, because it's rare to find people who are not passionate about some sort of sport.
Yeah.
And even if they're not, I have this Italian friend here in town who, go figure, an Italian who doesn't care about football at all. And when he admitted to that, I said, give me your passport. I think your citizenship will be revoked immediately. And that creates a conversation as well, right? It doesn't really matter if you're a fan or not. Just by using that as the conversation topic, I found it to be very, very mind-opening and engaging with most everybody that I met in my life. I don't know if that's similar for you.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, sometimes it can fall flat. You go, oh, what about that sport? And they go, yeah, I don't really follow it. Kind of like, well, great, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what is your, right? It opens up the conversation, I think. I think this topic is bigger, and we've got plenty of people in our network that do cultural work and are actually in that can give us some insights into this. And I think we should consider this as probably a bigger topic. Because same. I could be the same. I could sit here and talk about sport all day, and so I think this. If you're watching and you're listening, and you have any insights for yourself, or wish to come on and talk about your country's sport and what effect it has on you, please reach out to us. Please leave a comment. Please send us a note and all these little things down here. all our social media connections. So. It's the end of another week. 35 episodes in the can. Wonderful. Very proud of ourselves. Celebrating ourselves. We're freaking awesome.
Take your right hand and put it on your left shoulder and pat it like this and say, well done, Brett.
Well done, Brett. Well done. Thank you. That's right. We've got to celebrate. We're here to share. We're here to lift up. We're here to elevate. We're here to engage and give voice to whoever it is out there that wants to talk about culture and and be a part of this conversation. 35, yes, yeah, almost as old as I am. But that's so yes, we can certainly do a little bit more of that for each other, right? Share and care, and we're going into the weekend, as you say. Any big plans for the weekend, sir?
Well, I actually got work lined up. I'll be working on Saturday and Sunday. And the big plan is, of course, Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central European Time, or wherever else you are in the world. Watch the Champions League. Find out how you watch it. And, of course, root for my team. That's the one. That's the Munich team. Okay, root for them. Anything else, I don't care about.
That's right. And I'm not going to give it away, but I'm going to set this up. The word you just used, root for my team, has a completely different meaning in Australia. One that's
right.
always positive, and I may explain that. And it's another aspect. The terminology in sport can be different in different cultures. So the Australians that would be watching you say, "I'm rooting for my team," would be rolling around in laughter right now, saying, "Oh, we got another one that's rooting for the team." Just leave that with you. I'm gonna leave that as a little bit of a breadcrumb. So watch a future episode, and I'm going to explain some terminology in the terms of.
Brett just opened a loop that won't be closed in this episode. So cheer for my team. I hope that is maybe a little. Do whatever. Support my team, will you please? Thank you. All right.
Absolutely.
Happy weekend, everybody.
Thanks for joining, Kelly. We glad you joined, and thanks, mate. And we'll see everybody next week. See you guys. Bye.
Bye now.